and it's revealed to him that the Holy Rebbetzin of Constantinople, with a pure heart, wanted so much to shear the Shabbos fish that she paid triple the price than any nobleman could have paid for. And this is why you're there, and you don't know what you've done for the Shekhinah and for raising the sparks this Shabbos, because he did such an unbelievable, beautiful mitzvah. Finally, it was revealed to him the reason for his actions. Well, he goes back, goes into the shul with the Rav, and they daven Ma'ariv, and he prepares himself for leaving. His driver came already, and they're getting on the wagon. Turns around and he says, "Please bring me the Rebbetzin." The Rebbetzin was with the women. They were all there to say goodbye to him. And he turns to the Rebbetzin and says, "Rebbetzin, I beg you one thing. Please don't pray so hard, because your prayers broke through all the fences and all the doors to the highest heavens. And they told me I must be here for Shabbos because of your prayers. I'm getting older. I have no more strength for this, to have to run 6 hours Erev Shabbos. Please don't do it again." Very beautiful, special story. It teaches us the unbelievable adherence and love and devotion and loyalty to a mitzvah that a great tzaddik has had, and how her simple and deepest prayers broke through all the heavens, and this Heilige Tzaddik Ador had to come and be by her. Very beautiful story. Okay, so we will go to the halachas now. We are in the Kitzer Shulchn Aruch, the laws of Pesach, and I'm so proud that the last number of holidays we went through all the halachas of every holiday. Chanukah, Purim, I believe Sukkot as well, and I think Rosh Hashanah as well. So I hope we'll be able to study all these mitzvahs from beginning to the end. Though one might say, well, I don't really have to know all these things. You don't have to. But first of all, there's a mitzvah of studying Torah, whatever you study. And you'll know this for life. And B, eventually we'll get to the laws that everybody has to know about the Seder and about the Chametz and whatnot. Okay. We are up to $109, I believe. 109 speaks about the law of the water, containing 9 paragraphs. When to draw the water, when to begin kneading the matzah. This is all for the matzah, of course. The second paragraph will speak about if you're unable to calculate the proper time to strain the water and to keep it cool. Number 3, drawing for a number of days, earthenware utensils. Number 4 speaks about the rivers or the wells. Number 5, by a Jew. Number 6, utensil that contain a foreign substance. Number 7, adding water. Number 8, on Friday, Erev Shabbos. Number 9, pouring out the water due to danger. Okay, introduction. The water used for matzahs is subject to special requirements because water that is warm can cause the dough to ferment prematurely. Since at the time of year when the water for matzahs is drawn, the water may be somewhat warm, the water must be left standing overnight to cool off. See Mishnah Berurah 455, 2 and 3. This water is known as Mayim Shalanu, water that had stayed overnight. Okay, paragraph 1. One may not need the matzahs. This applies both to the matzahs mitzvah that we spoke about, that's used only for the Seder night, the special matzahs that are for the mitzvah of eating matzah, and to the matzahs that are used during the rest of Pesach as well. This is quoted from the Mishnah Berurah 455, 1. Now, One may not need the matzahs except with water that had stayed overnight, which is Maim Shalano, it's called. That is, one should draw the water during the Bein HaShmashis. We had this before, of course. Bein HaShmashis is the time period during which day ends and night begins. We'll see about this a little later. One should not draw the water earlier than Bein HaShmashis in order to allow it to cool off for the entire day in the well, which is cooler in the daytime. Nevertheless, if the water was drawn in the daytime, one may use it after waiting overnight. In fact, if drawing the water during Bein HaShmashis presents a degree of difficulty, one may initially draw the water in the daytime. Sibir Halacha 455.1. One should not draw water after Tzeis HaKechavim, after the emergence of the stars, so that the water should cool off in the air for an entire night. However, if the water was drawn after Tzeis HaKechavim, it may be used. Even though Chatchila shouldn't, it's better not, but if it was, then it's okay to be used, as long as it was drawn before Chatzos HaLayla, which is halachic midnight. And 12 hours have passed from when it was drawn until it was used. This is Mishnah Berurah 455.4. We'll see this further in the Kitzer as well. Okay. And it should stand detached from the ground for the entire night in a utensil. Initially, water that was in a cistern overnight that is attached to the ground should not be used. Okay. Even if the night is more than 12 hours long, one may not need with this water until daybreak. And if the night is short, and thus there are not even 12 hours from the time that the water was drawn until daybreak, it is necessary to wait until 12 hours have passed from the time that the water was drawn. The custom of the common folk is that immediately at daybreak, they knead the dough with Maim Shalano, this special water, even though 12 hours have not passed. Although they have upon what to rely. There are those that say it's okay, as there is an halachic opinion that permits using this water. Nevertheless, most halachic authorities rule stringently in this matter. Therefore, one must be vigilant in this matter. See Pri Megadim 455.1 and Eshel Avram, who rules that one must wait 12 hours or the entire night, whichever is longer, and Machzah Shekel 455, Sukkot 1, who also writes that most authorities rule accordingly. Very important. Okay. Kitz's defense of the custom of the common folk is drawn from Machzah Shekel, Mishnah Berurah 455.6, rules that in a case of necessity, if it's very important, one may rely on the lenient opinion and need immediately after Amod HaShacha, which is daybreak, even though 12 hours have not yet elapsed from the time that the water was drawn. Okay, very important halacha for Maim Shalanim. 2, paragraph 2. If one is unable to calculate the time of Bein HaShmashis, let's say it's a cloudy day, so you don't know when Bein HaShmashis is. Today there's calendars, there's Lochs Manei Hayom from my brother-in-law, Rabbi Primak, which is very good. You have all the calculations over there. So he should draw the water somewhat in advance of the time. Okay. As a rule, if one is unable to draw the water at the opportune time and is faced with the choice of drawing the water either earlier or later, it's preferable to draw the water earlier, even before Bein HaShmashis, rather than later. That's how the Mishnah Berurah 455.5 paskins. Provided that he does not draw it before sunset. Okay. Kitzer follows the opinion that Bein HaShmashis begins sometime after sunset. According to Mishnah Berurah 455.5, Bein HaShmashis begins at sunset. Therefore, in the opinion of Mishnah Berurah, If it is cloudy, and one has no means to determine the exact time of sunset, he should draw the water somewhat before sunset. Okay. The custom is to strain the water with a clean white cloth, says the Mishnah Berurah 455:12, and that's how it's done, and to cover it. This is done in order to ensure that no chametz falls into the water. One must keep it in a cool place overnight. When he carries it on the following day to the house where the dough will be kneaded, he should be careful that the sun should not shine on it. Therefore, here too, the water should be covered. Ramon 455. Okay, paragraph 3. One may draw water at one time for a number of days, but is meritorious to draw water for each day separately. The custom is not to draw the water with an old earthenware utensil, even if it is a Pesach utensil, unless it is glazed. For using an old unglazed earthenware utensil constitutes a lack of the beautification of a mitzvah. We always talk about hidur mitzvah. One should not deviate from this custom. An old, used, unglazed earthenware utensil becomes repugnant. Okay. Next, 4, paragraph 4. The rivers in the days of Nisan are generally cooler than the wells. Therefore, one should draw the water from the river. At times, however, the rivers are swollen from the melting snow, and they are not as cold, in which case it is better to draw the water from the wells. In the days of Nisan, which is when Pesach falls, the sun shines on the snow-covered mountains, causing the snow to melt, and the water from the melting snow to become warm, says Mishnah Berurah 455:17. Okay, we'll go further. Number 5, the water should not be drawn by a non-Jew, but only by a Jew. The matzahs mitzvah, which are used at the Seder, may be produced only by Jews, as we'll see further on. Although this requirement does not extend to the drawing of the water, since it's not part of the actual preparation of the matzahs, nevertheless, it's been considered, it is proper that even the machshirei mitzvah, the preliminaries of a mitzvah, be performed by a Jew. The water for other matzahs besides the matzahs mitzvah too should be drawn by a Jew. Ramon 455:1, out of the concern that a non-Jew may put chametz into the water. Ultimately, however, even if a non-Jew draws the water, it may be used for the matzahs mitzvah, since the custom is to strain the water. When one is drawing water for this purpose of matzahs mitzvah, he should say l'shem matzahs mitzvah. I'm doing this for the sake of matzahs mitzvah, which we'll see about later. Number 6, paragraph 6. One should not put the water into a utensil that contained honey or other fruit juices. Fruit juice mixed with water causes the dough to leaven more quickly. That we see in Shulchsn 462 and in 117:6, and also the notes in the Mishnah Berurah 455:25. With regard to these laws, any liquid besides water is included in the classification of fruit juices, so it's not allowed. One should not put the water into a utensil that contained honey or other fruit juices unless he performed hagala on it first. Hagala is purging. The process is used to remove flavor that has been absorbed in the walls of a utensil. The procedure and its laws are detailed below in 116. Okay, we won't go into that now. One should certainly not put the water into a utensil that contained a sharp, a pungent, substance, even if it was not chametz. For due to the effect of the sharp substance, the dough will hasten to leaven. We'll see about this later. And for this case, even hagala is not effective to allow the utensil to be used. One should also not place the water in a copper utensil, for it does not cool like other utensils do. Initially, one should not even draw the water with a copper vessel, since it causes the water to become warm. The copper itself warms. After the fact, however, if one did it, even if the water sat in such a vessel for a number of days, it may be used. Mishnah Berurah 455, 25. However, the dough may be kneaded in a copper vessel, even initially. Okay. Number 7. If one realizes that the mayim shalanu that has been prepared will not suffice for his needs, he may add other water to it. The water must be mixed together before kneading. One may not mix water that is not mayim shalanu directly into the dough. Mishnah Berurah 455, 39. Provided that the mayim shalanu constitutes the majority of the water. Initially, the right way how to do it is preferable that 2/3 of the final mixture of mayim shalanu be of mayim shalanu. One should endeavor, if it is possible, the right way to do it is to draw the water that is being added from a water pump or from another covered well, rather than from an open well, where the sun does not shine on the water. Number 8, when the matzahs are being baked on Sunday, the water must be drawn on Thursday evening, since on Erev Shabbos, on Friday before Shabbos, it's impossible to draw the water precisely at Bein HaShmoshes. And he explains here, there is a doubt whether Bein HaShmoshes is halachically considered day or night. Therefore, as Mishnah Berurah 455:15 explains, one must not initially draw the water during Bein HaShmoshes, for it may be Shabbos. And one may not make preparations on Shabbos for the matzah baking on the following day. It is even improper to draw the water immediately prior to Bein HaShmoshes, since one may end up drawing it during Bein HaShmoshes. Okay. In a time of pressing need, when one did not draw water on Thursday, one should draw it Erev Shabbos, Friday, after the Mincha prayer, or on Shabbos itself through a non-Jew. Mishnah Berurah rules that if one forgot to draw the water on Thursday night, he may draw it on Friday, even a considerable amount of time before the sunset. If the water was not drawn before Bein HaShmoshes, it may be drawn by a non-Jew, and some hold even by a Jew during Bein HaShmoshes. Mishnah Berurah 455:15. Number 9, and this is the last paragraph for today. One should not pour out of the water that was drawn for the matzahs because of a dead person in the neighborhood. In other words, like this, it's a custom to pour out all drawn water in the houses in the immediate vicinity of a person who died, God forbid. We have this further on in 194. Or because of the tekufa. The solar year is divided into 4 tekufas, seasons. The exact moment when the season begins, which roughly corresponds to the equinoxes and solstices, is referred to as the tekufa. Because of a concern of danger in using food or drinks that were uncooked at the time of the tekufa, foods or drinks that were uncooked at the time of the tekufa would not be used unless metal was put in them before that time. This was a very old custom. Today, I don't know how many people do this, or because of tekufa, as it's stated in Kehelas 8, Shomer mitzvah lo yedara. He who observes a commandment, a mitzvah, shall know no evil things. Although these precautions are normally taken in order to avoid possibility of danger, as we said, one who is involved in performing a mitzvah need not be concerned, since there is no greater protection for a person than following the word of Hashem and performing his mitzvahs. This applies even if the water is to be used for matzahs other than matzahs mitzvah. In such a case, however, if he can easily replace the water, he should do so. However, water that was prepared for matzahs mitzvah should not be poured out, even if it can be replaced, so that it should not appear that he is making light of the assurance that he who observes the commandment should know no evil thing. That's Mishnah Berurah 455:18 and Sharatzin. Nevertheless, initially, when one is aware of the tekufa, that the tekufa will arrive, this time of the year will arrive, he should put into the water a small and clean piece of metal, as we mentioned, before the tekufa. Like a needle, perhaps. He should suspend it with a thread so that it should not be necessary afterwards to put his hand into the water. One should not put his hand in the water, for his hand can warm the water, Mishnah Berurah 455:20, in order to take it out, in other words. Rather, he should pull it out with the thread instead. Okay, we will now go to Rabbi Braun, Shalom Tzion Ba'alacha. That was 109, right? We'll learn some of the commentaries that have to do with Maim Shalanu. We don't need the matzahs except with water that stayed overnight from Ben Hashmashis. So the Torah Zav in Tafnan Hay, that's 455, says that during the month of Nisan, the wells are very warm because the sun goes at that time by the lower part of the Rekia, which we have in the Gemara in Psachim, those that are learning Daf Yomi, close to the earth, and this warms up the wells. Others say that the reason is because by night the sun goes under the earth and warms up the wells that way. So according to the second interpretation, even when you do matzahs in the middle of the winter months, still you have to have Maim Shalanu. Now the Shas Tshuvas Chasam Sefer, the Chasam Sefer in his response in Ebenezer Simon Kufnan Gimel 153 says something very important. The Magen Avraham explains to us that sometimes one may draw water and it seems cold, even freezing. Still, if the Holy Chazal tell us, the sages of the Talmud tell us that you shouldn't use it for kneading because the waters sometimes are cold on top, but the gidei hamayim, the inside of the waters warm up, and this could happen after you first knead them, and you'll never know it from the outside. Because I'll say even the flows of the snows and ice boiling hot. So according to this Magen Avraham, we see the importance of making sure that it's not hot, that the waters are not hot. So the Ramah says, also in Tafnan Hay, that if someone by accident needed water with water that's needed, the dough with water that was not Mayim Shalanu, it's okay. And the Chak Yaakov says that still, even though it's okay, but for the first 2 nights, you shouldn't use that for matzah's mitzvah. And the Torah Zav brings down that if it's mamish an emergency and it's impossible to do the mitzvah of eating matzah, like it's Erev Pesach, it's right before Pesach, and there's no other matzah to be gotten. So even Chatchila, even at first choice, one could use those matzahs in such a case, in other words. The B'chacha, the Agos Masham, says that even according to those that are stringent, it's okay, anyway. Okay. And we'll speak about the Ben Hashmashis eventually. Though we know the basic already, but spoke about doing it at least before, as long as it's not done, he doesn't draw the water before the Shkia, before sunset. So he brings down, Rav Braun brings down a Ber Hativ, that it seems from the Achronim, from the Paiskim, the Halacha deciders, that if someone even drew water during the daytime, one may use it to knead the next day, and that's how the Shulchan Aruch brings down as well, and Mishnah Berurah also, and the Bir Halacha brings the Maimon Modcha, that in emergency, one may even draw water when it's completely daylight. The Shalos HaTshuvos, the response of the Chassam Sofer and Even HaEzer, the second volume, Siman Kufna and Gimel 153, says that a person should not put water in a room that they actually do the baking of the matzah, because of the heat that's in the atmosphere over there. And if he does that, then that water shouldn't be used for the kneading of the dough. And even if he puts his hand in it and sees that, it doesn't matter. It shouldn't be done. However, the Masham, the B'chacha in Tafnun Hay, says that it could be done. It's you could be lenient in this in such a case, as long as it wasn't directly in front of the oven. Now, what about doing it through a non-Jew, right? So the Kitzer said that we should not draw it through a non-Jew. The Chak Yaakov quotes the Maril and says this is one of the stringencies of Pesach. Pesach, Jews of all color, of all backgrounds, and all parts of Europe and Far East and Middle East, and Jews from all over are very, very stringent, and there's a good reason for this. And the Rav Shulchan Aruch says that if there's no other choice, one could use a non-Jew. And the Orchos Chaim HaChodesh says that as well, in the name of the B'chacha, the Eishel Avram, that as far as the halach is concerned, one could be lenient and bring water through a non-Jew, even for matzah's mitzvah, but it's better not to do that. The right way and the way a Jew should be acting for this great holiday is it shouldn't be done. What about fruit, juices? So the Magen Avram in Tafnan Heis of Cotton Test says that what it says in Shulchan Aruch, Tav Samach Beis, that's 462, that fruit juices with water become chametz very fast. It could make chametz very fast. And the only time that we use fruit juice in kneading matzahs is only where it's an emergency, someone is sick, or someone's an elderly person who can't eat matzah otherwise. We'll stop here, I guess. Okay. Have a good night.